Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is the Chronicles of Apple from the Apple of My Eye, and I'm going to do this video in regards to the up and coming possibility of a nuclear war. There's just been talk very recently, like in the last few hours, where meeting with Putin, describing how he wanted to use his nuclear and the capability that he has. So this may just be a threat, but it needs to be taken very seriously because it could go into an all-out nuclear war. So there's been, can we intercept missiles? I think at this point it was just like shooting, with missiles, and he's definitely bragging about the fact that his his bombs can actually be greater than Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So this is a direct threat being imposed worldwide over the fact that Putin wants to take back Ukraine, saying that they have common ties and they're practically like one people. But the Ukrainian history would say that no, we are more established than Russia. Uh, Kiev and Ukraine is in existence before Russia is ever in power, and therefore they are a separate entity. Plus, any time any country has separated, it does not mean that they have to be attached back to their former conqueror. So if they are Russianizing certain parts, what Ukraine is saying is that we do not agree with Russian dictatorship. Therefore, we're gonna fight. And okay, so that is Volodymyr Zelensky. So Volodymyr Zelensky appears to be kind of like a puppet for the NATO. So NATO is basically a coalition of countries in alliance against the Cold War, and that is because of Russia. Russia is very intimidated with Ukraine being part of the NATO because Ukraine is highly strategic. Now, there are claims and there are some validity to it that there were biolabs being created in Ukraine, and that is being done like pharmaceuticals and all that stuff, which is also quote unquote like biolabs, very similar to what China develops with the Wuhan virus and the the COVID-19. So because of that threat, Russia wanted to take back Ukraine, and Ukraine wanted to join NATO. And Zelensky, with what, over 26 or 46 billion dollars already poured into the country to prevent Russia from taking it over. So Russia wants to become an empire once again, just like the USSR, but it was this illusion back in 1991, I think. There's just a lot of breaking off. So Georgia separated, Poland separated. I think Poland first got out, but and then Yugoslavia, all these things, it broke apart. So the breaking apart of the USSR uh, is an indication that a lot of these people that were under the USSR were not in agreement to the dictatorship or this particular kind of it looks more like a monarchy, really. So there are what you call the oligarchs, the rich people that are in the same coup that is kind of like part of the government in Russia. And so when we went from the Cold War and then developed the NATO, and all these more countries joined the NATO, and the last one that actually, one of the few last ones is maybe Sweden and Finland, is already on the side of NATO. It should be a clear defeat for Russia. But Putin, the way the communistic country is, it is a government by fear. Everybody's supposed to know, okay, this is the president or the prime minister, and whatever he says goes. And the people are, and the media and any reporters, it's gonna be all on the side of this ruler, which is right now Putin. So how Putin came into power is he was part of the KGB, He wanted to be in the KGB. His family, I think his grandfather or father, is from the KGB. And he became a lawyer and he proved himself. I wanted to be in the KGB. So they put him in the KGB. And his job is to go back and forth, Germany and back, maybe part of an occultic practice, whatever Freemasonry they've got going on in Germany. But he basically gets the technology from Germany, brings it back to Russia. So later on, we have like Gorbachev, and Gorbachev lived quite a long time. Then he was replaced, and then there's this Boris Yeltsin. Okay, so Boris Yeltsin is sort of like tried to be like this great leader, and then there's a successor supposed to be, but then he needed some kind of a protection, and that became Putin. Somehow he was put in place there. But I think there is always a need for Russia to be part of an empire once again. So by design or by demonic influence, their leadership is plagued back with the concept of imperialism, Russian Empire, and Putin is the man of the hour. So he is the one that is going to he's sort of like plucked, and whether he was really meant to be it or not, it seemed to me that Putin is he's highly controversial, because it seems like there's a power behind him. Whoever is in control of the KGB, and then there's an FBS, some other entity that's kind of like a Russian KGB. He is like the yes man for them, and he is the appointed person from that sector of elite that is in control of KGB. So it's about the leader that is being chosen by the KGB is Putin. So Putin got kind of snuck in there by design, where he now he was not popular, and then the moment he was getting in and he was being introduced, no one knows him in Russia. The next thing you know, a lot of explosions took place, knocking down thousands of people in Russia, and it was considered to be a terroristic attack. This terroristic attack involved Chechnya or something like that, and then but I found out that the Chechnya leader, who is highly militant, in control of certain sector, they are in cahoots with Putin, like they're buddies. Putin kind of made sure that they have, I don't know, they have their territory in Chechnya. So he has that, and then he has a lot of these, like he is in control of the soldiers, of course, because he is the leader. Now, the reason for taking back Ukraine is because strategically Ukraine is valuable in terms of, if you wanted to shoot any one country, if you can station yourself in Kyiv or anywhere in Ukraine, you can pretty much get everywhere, and you can also get to. It only takes 2 hours to go to Ukraine from Israel, and I know that because I was with some Ukrainian. And that's what they told me. It just takes them just a few hours. So Israel is fairly close. Being part of the Middle East, they are fairly close to Turkey. They're close to the European nation. And what makes Europe, and the West is basically the Bible. So almost all the people, almost all the countries in NATO is actually Western civilization, and Western civilization means it is influenced by the Bible. So how did the influence of the Bible get to all the European nation? That is because of the Apostles' Creed and the Apostles' Acts, and moving in all these different countries, including, by the way, Turkey. But Turkey essentially became an empire of its own and became Islamic. And it is still largely Islamic, and they do not think highly of Israel at all. Okay, so you've got this country. Russia religion is basically a different form of Christianity. It's a type of it's not any. It's the Russian Orthodox Catholic or Christianity that they have is more in favor of the communistic. It's very connected to that. It's basically their own type of Christianity. So to me, it's a false Christianity. Whatever it is that Putin is even trying to promote, it is not the real Christianity that is in the Bible, because they're not going to follow that. It is more particular for them. So German Hitler had Odin as a god who appears to be a Christian. So he would quote the word God, but he has a different concept of God. It is not the biblical God. It is basically Odin. When somebody finally pointed it out, it is Odin. So the Antichrist spirit, the concept there of the Antichrist spirit is to usher in not just the New World Order, but to also put an end to the world prematurely. And it will sacrifice human beings through an act of war. And the New World Order also funds both sides of the war. They make good money with that. So we have to really pray that this war does not explode to nuclear, because it doesn't benefit humanity other than Satan. And we need to pray for the missionaries all over the world, whether it's Turkey, China, and Russia. So the origin of communism is actually Germany from Marxist. Marxism is basically the epitome of the Marxist regime developed, where it's sort of like negating God and putting in sort of man and the strength, the survival of the fittest. So it is the superiority. It has a superiority. It's the same way as Islam. It is basically the rule of men, okay, because they are the stronger sex, basically. They dictate everything. There is no honor really designated to women other than ownership, okay? In communism, no one owns anything. It is all centralized. So centralized when it comes down to government, centralized production, centralized media. And because they have the centralized media, they can put a lot of fear on everybody. So China eventually picked up communism from the German to the Russian to China, and then they fund North Korea. So North Korea's existence and alliance is because they are technically birthed. The North Korean Communist Party is birthed from China and the support of Russia. They're all in alliance, and just recently North Korea sent their soldiers over to Russia to fight Ukraine. And there was a lot of defectors from the moment. So the people there, the issue, what makes Hitler and Stalin and Lenin, Stalin, and now we got Putin ineffective is the fact that the people that are highly loyal to the leader are those that are benefiting financially or works for them. But when it comes down to the general public, they are only viewed with fear. And so there is no real passion, okay, for this. Unlike in a more democratic country, and if they had been in a communistic country, they do not like that level of control. So Ukrainian people, having gotten out of, communism, does not want to go back to it. And therefore they will fight tooth and nail. And, but we have Zelensky that is like a NATO puppet, and everybody's money is poured into them. Now, the issue there is that how is Ukraine going to be used? So the one possibility for the war to end is because, if it's a level of attrition, okay, and Russia is going to run out of artillery, which they're not at that position, so they are going to continue. but he is highly calculated. Like Putin is not like a drunkard. He's not impulsive to that degree. He calculates how things will go. Okay, I do think he's got an occultic background, just the way he's affiliated and how he was put in power. He had to have been in some level of a Russian grown Freemasonry of its kind. But it seems like they are, of course, protective. Okay, so Putin is protective of the Russian people to a degree, but he will sacrifice all of them when he wants to. And so there's a lot of people leaving Russia right now. So if they're leaving Russia, that means that most of the people that are leaving Russia are those that have either money, connections, and brains. And so there's a brain drain leaving Russia. And so the same as Iran, okay? Eventually, you will see that based on the Bible and Jeremiah, I think 49, God is going to take back the southern part of Iran. Whether that is the whole Iran or part of Iran, the Lord is going to, set himself in place where his spirit is going to permeate upon that area. Because Russia knows that if Iran goes down, when it comes down to the oil, Russia makes money through the oil. And they have the embargo, and they're used to embargo, but China and Russia is in connection to share each other's resources. And so China gets importation of Russian oil, and then they also exchange whatever missiles or parts. Okay, so they are very limited right now in Russia. And a lot of the people that are smart and can get out will get out. And by the way, the U.S. have most of the millionaires. Most of the millionaires in the United States are actually Russians. So there is connection. And so if there is a brain drain going on from Russia because of this war taking for several years, and most of the people are not in compliance with Putin with this war, but they have to be in agreement, and it may not be reflected when it comes down to the polling because of a centralized media, which means that people are just in fear. If they were to answer that they are not in favor of Putin, they don't want to be killed. I spoke with somebody years ago, 2011, and he says that he come from St. Petersburg, and he goes to, I forgot now exactly, but he was in St. Petersburg. He said if you were to go to the mall and the KGB is there, for some odd reason they don't like you, they can just kill you and you'll be gone. You'll be gone. No one can look for you. There is no real police, okay? So the people live under suspicion and fear. That's how the Russian peoples live. And so they escape that when they can. Like you will see a lot of Russian people in Israel. I don't know to what degree they're really Jewish. I don't think so. I think a lot of them will just do anything to get out of Russia. So it is really a place where suspicion is built in. You have to be careful. It's kind of like 2 out of 10 of the people that you meet are people that can turn you in. It's like a witch hunt, technically. So if they don't like you, they can just make stuff up and you can be taken away. So they don't have those war. One time, I think 70,000 soldiers already died. Okay, compare that with the amount of soldiers dying right now in the Middle East because of an Israeli-Iran war, okay, and all its proxies. It doesn't equal the amount of deaths that has taken place in Ukraine, yet you do not see anyone from the ICC putting an arrest warrant on Russian President Putin. So looking at this, we really have got to pray because it seems like there's one big artery of pipeline going through China and Russia. And if they are smart and they know that the U.S., in conjunction with all the Western civilization, okay, nations that do not want them to infect all the other democratic countries that have branched out of USSR. Okay, they're saying, well, Ukraine is part of us anyway. We are the same people. Therefore, we want them back. Well, you can't do that if they don't want to be back to you. Because when you basically Russianize them, and that's why they have some Russians, but you cannot force them to get back with you. That's not how it works. It's kind of like it's like a divorce, okay? You cannot force somebody to be your wife again who doesn't want to be your wife after the divorce. So, in the same token, like England is not gonna say, oh well, we conquered you before, now you're back to us, okay? They can't force that. Anytime that it's forced, it causes a lot of chaos. So the one way, when it comes down to negotiation, if Russia, we need to pray that the Russian people, the underground churches, all over Russia and all over these war-torn countries, Ukraine, needs to really be in communication. And we need to pray for them, because there is a way to stop the war, and that is through some level of negotiation. Vladimir Putin, from the basis of his name, it means royal or great ruler. Okay, so this Russian, so this Vladimir Putin, if he understands that he is at the last leg of his, like his tie with China is what makes them survive. But that is through the pipeline, largely through the pipeline. Now, who is in control of internet, communication, and all of that? It is not centralized to Russia alone. They may have some, but it can easily be obliterated, and so is the radar system, and so is the gas pipe. If they really want to go into a nuclear thing, it is not going to be that hard for NATO to pummel them down and cut off the entire China-Russia gas line. And that leaves them with nothing. So that knocks out both China and, of course, the whole world. Everything is going to go expensive when that happens, by the way. So ideally, we don't want that. The whole world does not want war. We don't need more wars. It is really going to make everything so much more expensive, the gas price and everything. But because the U.S. we get our gas not just from one place, we are not going to be as affected, and we have a very dispersed, even though there is it's a little bit centralized. We're democratic. We have multi-layer of media, even though the majority of the media may be controlled by the New World Order. Not everything is entirely controlled by them, which is why we can produce YouTube videos and what have you. Now, if Putin, by God's grace, is smart enough, okay, he will hold back. And I think that is a possibility, especially with Donald Trump, because the effect of war it's 1 to 100. 1 ruble, I don't know, like their money is like a ruble or something like that. Ruble. 1 ruble to 100 already, and they don't have much importation anywhere except what they can get out of China, and of course nothing comes without a strings attached. So if they are having to pull soldiers from North Korea, that tells me that they don't have enough soldiers themselves. A lot of them had been killed off because of this 1,000 days of war already, a heavy war with Ukraine. And then the world continually has been pouring so much money into Ukraine. And how is this war going to end? What is going to be the best case scenario? Well, there's a way to do it, and which is what they did before in North and South Korea, is that they put a demilitarized zone. If they put a demilitarized zone and they keep Ukraine at a neutral, okay, even if they wanted to go to NATO, just keep them neutral for the time being, there will be an end to war. They can have their protection from the NATO anyway, but they don't have to be part of it. But it needs to be kept neutral if we want, Russia to not go and to not keep going with this war. And there's already a lot of blood sacrifice upon the Ukrainian people, upon the Russian people, with the thousands and thousands of deaths. And the way we need to pray is to understand that in the Word of God, 365 times we are not to fear. So we don't have fear. We understand how these world leaders work. We need to pray for God's divine plan and heavenly direction, heavenly strategy to put an end to the war. And so we need to really pray that Putin puts a stop on this nuclear, because he has a lot more to lose than anyone else. Everything can go expensive here in the US, yes, but the damage is going to be largely in St. Petersburg, Moscow, and their gas line all the way to China. That can be totally disrupted. And supposedly they cannot there's something missing. They can't really reach, I think, the US that quickly, but they can always say that they can. But for whatever it is best for Russia to hold back and stop, the same way that Germany had to put a stop because they were losing artillery, so they practically declared a loss, okay? They put an end on it. So that is, something that we need to pray for, whether, because if, let's say, Ukraine is part of NATO, the threat of Russia would be so exorbitant, because if they are building nuclear labs, it is going to be the target of Ukraine would be, and NATO would be, Russia. But if it's neutralized, okay, meaning like it is not part of NATO, then Russia can back off on the war deal or the threat that they're making. And for a fact, they're running out of soldiers, so they might as well go into concession instead of like a bigger embarrassment and a bigger damage. Okay, embarrassment is one thing, huge damage. And right now, NATO has Finland and even Sweden. So the neighboring country of Russia itself can make it very easy for them to target St. Petersburg and Moscow. So we need to really pray that these demonic alliances are divided. The China, the Russian, the South Korean coalition will be severed and blocked in Yeshua's mighty name, and God is going to answer our prayers. And I don't think we're quite yet at the Gog and Magog, because before that happens, it's gonna be the Ottoman Empire basically taking over the same thing that Iran Islamic leadership is. So there is now a switching from the Shiite attack on Israel to the more Sunni side, Sunni Islam attack of Israel in the coming days. But there is going to be a ceasefire taking place. Lebanon has lost a lot of commanders, and so has the Iranian proxy Hamas. But Hamas is now switching to Turkey for leadership, and so we're gonna see that coming up. And we need to really pray for the disillusionment of the people over the world, and for Christians to wake up. And we really have to pray, especially for the deliverance of the people in Russia, in Ukraine, in Iran. And if it takes neutralizing, keeping Ukraine neutral in order to stop the war, then that's where I'm hoping it would go. Because it's also dangerous for Ukraine to be an all-out because if NATO is in control of Ukraine, it is most likely there is a chance that the Ottoman Empire can also use that area. Because there is also Turkey that used to, I think, want a piece of Crimea. And there is a connection between Russia and there is a connection between Russia and Turkey. They sort of exchange, they exchange wives and husbands. I don't know. There's like a free pass. I don't think they needed to have a visa if they're coming from Russia. They can move to Turkey. So Turkey is kind of like a questionable, malignant, but on a biblical scale, the Ottoman Empire is pivotal in the end times on Gog and Magog, and they do have connection to Libya, to Kush, and to different parts of the Middle Eastern countries. They have a strong military and fairly strong economy. And if NATO ends up feeding into Turkey, it's going to be a problem for the Western civilization, which is more biblically based nations that are developed. So anyway, yeah, we have got to pray because this third world war is brewing, but we can also see where the weakness of Russia is taking place, and we have to thank God for democracy to flourish and to continually flourish. And also we have South Korea that can actually put North Korea in check, along with um, the Philippines, and the Philippines is now gaining missiles as well because of China. And I'm not against Chinese people, I'm not against Russian people or Ukrainian people or Iranian people or anybody, but for a fact, we have to look at what is in the Bible. And, the Lord, in the book of Ezekiel alone, over 50 times, there's a 72 times in the Bible, it says that you will know that I am the Lord your God. So war will take place, and people will know that the Lord is God, the God of the Bible. So anyway, I'm going to end it right here. Thank you and God bless. And the word of God does not return to him void. So if he came to save people, it's not going to be a handful of people coming back to him. There's going to be a lot of people, because every knee will bow, every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, the Messiah. And also, it will be tribes, nations, and tongues. And because of that, that means that this empire cannot just be taking up anyone they want. Not the communism, not the Islamic. The nations have an opportunity to return to the Lord because of that statement, that every knee will bow and every tongue confess. Okay, so there are specific tongues, okay, language, and there's a specific place because nations are also there in the book of Revelation, and therefore all the people from different countries are going to honor God, okay? Whether or not their leaders would, they will also have to bow down, because it says that every knee will bow. So even the tyrants will bow down to the Lord. And again, 72 times it is stated in the Bible that you will know that I am the Lord your God. And 365 times, do not fear. So we must not be in fear. We have to be sober-minded, vigilant, awake, and continually be in prayer over these war-torn countries. So thank you and God bless.